Welcome to the conflict management as a leadership skill module. This is mastering the art of resolution. And what this means is, we work on transforming workplace tensions into opportunities for growth, innovation, and stronger team dynamics through expert conflict resolution strategies. In a workplace, conflict is often an opportunity to enable growth of people, to see solutions and solve for problems. But because there is a conflict, it just means that it's a growth phase and not the end. With that as a thought, let's move forward. In the next 30 minutes, learn how to look at conflicts, what are the various types of conflicts that we have, and how to go about resolving them in a stepwise, easy manner. So, in first chapter, let's look at understanding conflict in leadership. What is conflict? Why is it inevitable? Right? If there are two or more people looking at the same thing, they look at different perspectives and different aspects of the same thing. And hence, when there are diverse perspectives at play, conflict is a natural, inevitable thing that happens. So, true measure of leadership lies in how we navigate these tensions and get to a solution. So, let's go about understanding the types of conflict that happen and what creates a conflict in the first place. So, conflict is inevitable in leadership because these are the four key aspects that it occurs in the first place. First is differing values, core beliefs, principles, how our teams do their work could change from one member to another member, from one team to another team, creating a natural friction when they are diverge. The second aspect of it could be competing goals. The individual and department goals or interdepartment goals and objectives may not always align very perfectly, leading to tensions, leading to priority conflicts, leading to conflict in resources, right? The third type of conflict is personality clashes. Diverse working styles, temperaments, and preferences can create misunderstandings and interpretation friction. Now, this is a conflict type that maybe we will touch upon last during our coaching session. Having said that, it is definitely important to prioritize this personality clashes as one of the key clashes to handle in conflict resolution. The fourth the most common conflict happens because of communication gaps. Different communication styles and preferences often lead to misinterpretation and confusion in workplace interactions. Now, what is a conflict signal? Okay, it just signals a diversity of thought and signals a different engagement level. But if it is not managed well, it can erode morale, it can reduce productivity and fragment a team's cohesion. Hence, conflict, when occurs, needs to be handled effectively and within a stipulated time. But a natural reaction to any conflict is to ignore the conflict itself. We usually put things under the bed or under the table to make sure that it need not be resolved. But what happens if you do that? If you push a conflict to a future date, or if you try to hide a conflict and not find a solution? The ripple effect of an unresolved tension usually results in, plummeting morale of the team, raising turnover, or draining productivity. Now, why does this happen? When we, avoid a conflict instead of handling it, or if we mishandle a conflict so that, and what I mean by mishandling is one of the most usual ways where people mishandle conflict is by just shouting, overpowering power to reduce the voice of the conflict, but not resolving the conflict in the first place. The consequences then cascade throughout the organization, creating a toxic environment that undermines every aspect of performance. So, what does plummeting morale mean? A plummeting morale means the team members withdraw emotionally, losing motivation and commitment to their work and their colleagues. And when there is no emotional connect, people come to office, people are part of your team, attend your meetings, but they are not giving in good ideas. They are not adding value to the work that is being done. They're just doing that 8-hour job and closing the day. And this kind of work is harmful, raising turnover is your skilled talent will always seek for a healthier environment. So they would try it. And this would lead to a costly recruitment cycle. But you know what is not often spoken about? The knowledge loss that happens. When teams stay with us for months and years together, there is a lot of working knowledge that the team has with them. And when these individuals quit, that knowledge loss is never accounted for. Most of our KT documents also could cover only the kind of meetings one attend, the kind of work one has already done, and put it in a drive. But how many of the new recruits actually look into it and take it forward from there? And if they do, to what percentage do they do? Hence, the knowledge loss of good talent quitting you is quite irreplaceable, and this turnover could cost company quite a bit. The final one is the productivity drain. When energy is diverted to managing tensions at office, the interpersonal relationships, the inner focus of how one is looking at this issue and what it means to them, they are not able to focus on strategic objectives and innovation, resulting in a huge productivity drain. Now, here's a research that is shared from Harvard. Early intervention in workplace conflicts prevents long-term damage to team cohesion and preserves the innovation capacity of diverse groups. The types of conflicts and the levels of conflicts that leaders face. Understanding the scope and nature of conflict helps leaders choose appropriate resolution strategies and allocate resources very effectively. The first and foremost type of conflict is the conflict that we have within ourselves. The conflict that is usually, happening because of competing priorities, ethical issues that we face, or just a confusion in the role that we have, whether it belongs to our KRA or somebody else's KRA, right? And that could affect decision making quality and the confidence that we have in our decision making, or just the confidence in whatever we try to do. So solving for this intrapersonal conflict is extremely crucial, right? A lot of us sort of ignore it because we are able to do 90 other things well, and this 10% hence is ignored. Having said that, if you would have heard through the Pareto's principle, then you may be potentially losing a lot of good work, the ability to reach to your true potential by just ignoring the intrapersonal conflict that you are facing. Hence, I would recommend 3 ways to solve for this conflict. First way to solve for this conflict is by, understanding that the conflict exists and maybe writing it down to make sure that there is clarity in your mind about the conflict. The second way is to reach out to a mentor or read a relevant book and find solutions through somebody else's experience and see how that experience can help you solve for the concerns you have within. The third way and the most effective way is to work with a coach who can help you understand your thought process, understand your patterns, and help you break the pattern and reach your true potential. Moving forward, the next type of conflict is the interpersonal conflict. What does this mean? It means that the direct clashes between two individuals which happen because of personality differences, competing interests, or communication breakdowns and requires mediation. As a leader, it is extremely important to make sure that we maintain space, give both individuals different space of comfort as well as psychological safety and a listening space so that they know that you've heard them completely and you understand their perspective completely without feeling threatened about it. Once you have done that, it is important that at an appropriate time you get all parties involved in a meeting with a plan to resolution, and then look at very objectively conducting that meeting to solve this interpersonal conflict. Now, a lot of times it may seem like babysitting, it may seem like a waste of time. However, it is extremely important to invest time in solving the interpersonal conflicts at office, because that could be potentially stopping the high performance that one delivers at work. The third type of conflict is the intergroup conflict. Dispute between teams, departments, or factions within the organization, often driven by resource competition or differing objectives. Sometimes it so also happens that the intergroup conflict comes because of not very clearly writing down a goal. So, work with the heads of these individual departments or groups, and sometimes the key influencers in that department, and try and see how the alignment of these goals can be done not only just at the top but in a cascading way. Now, some of these intergroup conflicts could take much longer time because there is a cultural tone that needs to be set. And in such a scenario, it is important for a leader to step up, involve the key stakeholders, help them understand that there is a conflict, there is a problem that requires a resolution, and then program manage the complete conflict resolution. This kind of conflicts are extremely important to solve because sometimes this could get the organization to make or break status. And finally, the inter-organizational conflict. Tensions between your organization and external partners, clients, or competitors requires diplomatic and strategic resolution, right? A lot of times, these kind of inter-organizational conflicts could come because of differing priorities, differing understanding of the problem statement, or differing assurances or the break in assurances that has happened with period of time. These kind of conflicts and tensions sometimes could also occur because of not understanding the cultural nuances at work. Hence, I would always recommend that getting somebody to resolve for this diplomatically and making this somebody's KRA for a period of time becomes extremely important to solve for these kind of conflicts. Moving forward, the essential leadership skills for conflict management. So, what are the kind of skills one should master to help them have an interpersonal strategic competency that can be refined through practice and reflection? What are these kind of skills that we should have, and how can we go about using these skills for conflict management? One of the important skills is the emotional intelligence, right? The cornerstone of an effective conflict resolution is always the emotional intelligence. Okay, an emotionally intelligent leader can help navigate the complex emotional landscape of workplace conflicts with grace, wisdom, and authenticity. Now, how can one become an emotionally intelligent leader? As you can see on these slides, self-awareness, self-regulation, and empathy are the key things one should develop to become emotionally intelligent. Now, what does self-awareness mean? Self-awareness means that you know your emotional state, you know what triggers you, you know what are the biases that run within you in real time, so that it helps you to respond rather than react, right? Self-regulation means that how you allow yourself to manage your emotions when you are under pressure and maintain credibility and model the behavior you wish others to see, because an emotionally intelligent leader is usually looked upon by his team, and then modeling those behaviors consistently with the team is critical as well. The final thing is empathy. Understanding and validating others' feelings creates psychological safety and opens pathways to genuine resolution. Now, empathy is not just is equal to putting your foot into somebody else's shoes, but also knowing how it feels inside that shoe, whether it's comfortable, whether your feet fits in, whether it's sweaty, whether it's cold, whether it's torn. To understand is empathy. Empathy as a word without understanding and just knowing somebody else's scenario could be a misinterpretation of the word empathy. So empathize truly, genuinely. So emotional intelligence builds trust and psychological safety that is essential for an open, honest dialogue about difficult issues. With me so far. The second important skill that is required is active listening and empathy. Now, I think empathy is going to be extremely important and consistent for being an emotionally intelligent leader. So let's focus on active listening. How to be an active listener, right? To be an active listener, listen beyond words. Pay careful attention to the tone, body language, pauses, the emotional undertones that reveal the deeper story beneath surface statements. Okay? The second important thing is to validate feelings. Acknowledge people's emotions without necessarily agreeing with the position. Validation helps de-escalate tensions and builds rapport. Now, how do we validate a feeling versus validating a statement? Give it a 2-minute thought. Let me pause here. Think about a scenario where you have faced a conflict and you want to validate somebody's feeling without really validating their stance, right? So, this is how you go about it. Acknowledge the emotions. So you say for example, somebody is sad. Then you say, I can see you're hurt. I can see you're feeling sad. Without necessarily agreeing with the position. You don't have to say, I see you're right about how you feel about that department, not agreeing to your thoughts. You're right about the way you feel. That is agreeing to the perspective itself, right? Can be misunderstood that way. So it's very important to just validate the feeling. Say, I see you're hurt. I see you are feeling wronged, right? Now let's get into the third part of active listening. The third part of active listening is to uncover root causes. How do you uncover root causes? Use reflective listening and probing questions to identify underlying needs, fears, and interests driving the conflict. So, it's extremely important to probe questions, to ask the right set of questions, to be able to understand the root cause of a problem, root cause of a conflict. And this can be done by underlying needs, fears, and interests that somebody has to come out, and that requires psychological safety. So, how do you use a reflective listening thing? A reflective listening, usually, for example, if somebody is telling you things like, but this goal will make sure that I get my input only 10 days later, and that becomes very difficult for me to deliver within another 3 days. The reflective listening is to say, so are you saying your work requires 3 days? Could be one reflective probing question. The other reflective probing question could be to say, can you define the aspects of your work that can be done without this input? And so on and so forth. So, uncover the root causes to make sure that you are very objective about things while you are identifying the underlying needs that one has. Active listening transforms adversarial conversations into collaborative problem solving sessions. You know, a lot of times I have seen when there is a lot of adverse conversations that are happening, things are very negative in place, it converts into a very collaborative problem solving when you know that the other person involved is interested in solving it too and not interested in blaming. And that's a key thing. You know, in any kind of conflict resolution, look at things objectively and try to solve it objectively instead of focusing the whole art of putting the blame on an individual or a team. Clear and constructive communication. Now, how do we ensure that there is extremely clear and constructive communication? And this is an important skill as well for a leader to solve any type of conflict. The first key thing is display transparency of your intent. Communicate your intentions, expectations, reasoning openly to reduce misunderstandings and to build trust. Ambiguity breeds suspicion and escalates tensions extremely unnecessarily. Now, what does this mean? This means that when you communicate in the start of your session with anybody, take that 3 minutes to give a narrative of why this meeting and what are your intentions and expectations from this meeting. For example, if you are in a meeting in a one-on-one to resolve a team issue, right, then you are talking to that leader. You will have to maybe start the complete meeting by saying, hey, thank you for taking time and to join me for this meeting. My intention about this meeting or the expectation from this meeting is to resolve the problem XYZ to make sure that there is a win-win between you, ABC, and the department. This is extremely critical for the progress of our company, and hence this is what I am intending to do by solving this issue XYZ. Is there something you want to add that can help resolve this issue? This meeting should not take more than 60 minutes unless both of us have more solutions and more details and root causes to discuss. I will be very happy to schedule more time and be with you as part of you to solve this issue. Now, when you give out a transparency of intent like this, what happens is you are immediately winning the trust of the individual there. They know that their interest is your interest. So it doesn't escalate any unnecessary tension, it de-escalates it, and what it really does is it welcomes the other individual to contribute and make it a teamwork to solve a problem. The second thing is issue focused language. Frame discussions around specific behaviors, outcomes, and situations rather than attacking personalities or character. This keeps the conversations productive and solution oriented. For example, if you are solving for a department's productivity or a missed goal, then the language should always be centered to that goal. How can we increase the productivity of Department XYZ by 9th January 2026? Now, this is a very, very futuristic language and a solution oriented language, and it is also issue focused language. The same thing, how not to do it is, sometimes it comes very naturally to us to say, I know ABC is working on it. Are you saying it's ABC's problem and not your problem? Do you see the difference? Think over it. I'll give you a minute to ponder over what I just now said and see how you could convert everything that you are speaking to an objective issue focused language versus a personality or a character focused language. Now, here's another caution that I want to add for you. A lot of times it so happens that we think that talking about some other personality or some other person's character in this meeting would give psychological safety for this individual. But that's not true. Because how people read people is, if you could speak about them to us, then you will speak about us to them. Right? So hence that beats the intentional, it beats the intent that you could have. It beats the issue focused language guidance that I am giving you. So don't even discuss any type of personalities in the meeting. Be completely focused on the issue. And if you are able to appreciate somebody who solves some things like this, who are not connected to this issue, but in some other department or a bookish example, then you could use that as a reference. But don't really use any of the personalities who are related to this issue as an example while solving the issue. Okay? The final one is assertive yet respectful. What does this mean? So you express your needs and boundaries very clearly while honoring the dignity and perspectives of others. Assertiveness without aggression demonstrates strength and maturity. So be respectful always without hesitating to say what you are meant to say. Moving forward, let's look at self-awareness and observation as the inner work that is required for us to be great leaders, right? Great leaders and great leaders who are solving conflicts in this context. So the inner work that is required is to recognize your biases. So how do you recognize your biases? We all carry unconscious preferences and blind spots that influence how we perceive and respond to a conflict. So spend some time, every time reflect. So this is my favorite. I tell this to all my coaches and all my teams. I've said this forever, that please spend time reflecting. Reflecting is the third style of learning. So what are the three types of learning? The first type of learning is a classroom learning, right? You learn in a classroom from a mentor, from a teacher, from an external person. You learn the skill, subject, knowledge. The second way of learning is by doing the work yourself, right? You do the work, and because of which you learn. The third type of learning is the most important type of learning, and very few percentage of people do. However, most smart leaders do this. It is learning through reflection. If you have a tape recorder in your mind and you can replay it, not to understand what others have done and how you could penalize them, but to understand what you have done, what were your biases, what were your blind spots, how could you have handled it more efficiently, and you put the focus within yourself, that will help you recognize your biases. And don't stop at that. Make a journal of it and reflect upon it at least once a week until you solve for those biases that you have. Okay? Identify your triggers. Certain behaviors or situations may provoke emotional reactions based on past experiences. So sometimes what happens is, we have a certain past experience, and because of which we suddenly react in a very disappropriate way, and in a very disproportionate way also, to an issue that happens, which could trigger a past remembrance but is not the past. It is your present. It could be very different from how your past was, but you just got triggered and you behaved very differently, and you actually created the issue or worsened the issue by your reaction. So identify those triggers and see how you could solve it. Again, don't miss to journal. Develop pattern recognition. Notice that recurring conflict dynamics in your team and organization to address systematic issues getting solved very, very proactively. It's extremely important for us as leaders to notice this recurring conflict, right? If the same type of conflict consistently keeps repeating in the team or in the organization, it's extremely important for us to address that as a system issue and not as one time issue and leaving it at that, because there could be a root cause that you have not observed yet. So, impartial observation, it is nothing but step back from the emotional intensity and observe yourself and make notes around it. Let's get to chapter 3. Proven conflict resolution strategies for leaders. Now I am going to give in some of the strategies that have worked so far. Having said that, my core belief in problem solving is that you could be extremely innovative in solving problems every time, because no two problems are same, no two people are same, no two situation is same. However, if we have bucketed them and seen the common working strategies, let's look at it. Now, theory meets practice, actionable strategies that transform workplace tensions into opportunities for growth, innovation, and strengthened relationships. This is a method that I really would advocate in solving the conflict early and solving it directly. So first of all, address the conflict as early as you can and as directly as you can. But address the conflict only when you have done your work on self-awareness and settled your emotions. Right? Your past experience. Say for example, you've tried to solve this issue with a particular department head 2-3 times and it has been extremely bad. Rather, you have had a bitter experience by doing something like this. So don't go ahead with conflict resolution with that bitterness in mind, because that will not help your conflict resolution. So once you've done that, address the conflict early and directly. First is early detection. Spot all the warning signs: tension in meetings, decreased collaboration, passive-aggressive behavior before they escalate. Second, take a swift action. Don't wait for the perfect moment. There is nothing called as a perfect moment, okay? It is just like people, stopping work for perfection. So once I learn everything, I will start doing work. But that learning everything is an impossible day. A human being keeps learning till their last breath, right? So I will do everything only after I learn everything is like a statement that is very paradoxical in nature. So address issues promptly while they are still manageable and emotions don't, uh, have not gotten hardened up, the emotions have not overflown yet. So take swift action. Have private conversations. Create safe spaces for parties to express concerns openly without fear of public embarrassment or professional repercussions. So create a safe space for everyone. Encourage a dialogue. Facilitate direct communication between evolved parties rather than becoming the intermediary for all exchanges. So, what does that mean? That once you have private conversations, give them space so that they could do direct conversation. Don't be an intermediate who is trying to, in a very colloquial way, who is doing a postman's job. Don't be a postman. Okay? A leader always enables the teams to converse, communicate, and thrive. They don't become the postman. Now, how do we set expectations? Moving from private conversations to encouraging dialogue is the tricky part. So, here's what most leaders also set in as worry, saying that I just assured that person that it is safe. Now, if I put them in a meeting and if I have to say something that could lead into my promises done to an individual breaking, then it's better that I become the postman than, encouraging a direct conversation. How to handle this? So here's how I recommend we handle it. Make sure that towards the end of every private conversation, you do a debrief of that conversation. You highlight the key points you are taking away from the conversation and take the permission of the individual to use that as their perspective in future meetings as required to make sure that the conflict is resolved. Now, just by doing this simple step, you have built space of trust and collaboration at the same time. So, nip the problems in the bud before they grow into conflicts that consume time, energy, and goodwill across the organization. This is an extremely important one. Do identify the root cause and not just the symptom. It's extremely important to find lasting solutions for all the problems. Okay? Now, how do we do that? How do we go about digging deeper for lasting solutions? A lot of times, surface disagreements rarely tell the whole story. Effective leaders investigate the underlying interests, needs, and fears driving the conflict. So, ask a probing question. Use open ended questions like, what's most important for you about this? Or what would an ideal outcome look like? Right? Help people reflect and answer those questions. Then, based on the answers they say, if something is not very clearly understood by you, and help yourself clarify it. Ask them questions that will clarify their stance. So paraphrase what you hear to ensure understanding and help parties articulate their true concern more clearly. The final one is peel back layers. Move beyond position, to identifying interests. Like, for example, move beyond I want ABC to I need recognition or I need autonomy. Get people to move towards what's really their interest in this lasting solution that they are seeking for. As we spoke, the final step of facilitating mediation and neutral facilitation is extremely crucial for an effective problem solving. So, here are the 5 steps that I would recommend in facilitating any mediation session or facilitating being a neutral party as a leader in problem solving that or solutioning that problem, right? So establish ground rules. Set clear expectations for respectful dialogue, no interruptions, no personal attacks, focus on finding solutions together, etc. etc. So sit down, make rules for your meeting and set that in as part of your introduction or ground rule setting to the meeting. So what is the first one you're going to do in the meeting as the meeting starts? Remember, you are going to set your intentions and what are your outcomes that you are expecting from the meeting. Set that in place first. The second important thing is to establish ground rules. So as the meeting starts, the second important thing to do is to set clear expectations for a respective dialogue, right? Create a very neutral space. Choose a location and time that feels safe and impartial to all parties. For example, if you have people moving out at 3 o'clock shift and a certain set of people who are in general shift, don't keep the meeting at 3 o'clock. That would feel partial to a set of people who have logged in from early morning and will have to extend their day by an hour to solve for the problem that is existing currently. So do create a neutral space. Make sure that you take consent from people on both the location and time, and it is an extremely safe neutral space that you create. Make sure you remove any power dynamics wherever it is possible. Third important step is to guide and don't dictate. So your role as a facilitator is to understand and explore the number of options that are coming as a solution. And do not impose what is your preferred solution on the parties. Rather, guide them, ask them the right set of questions so that they are able to find and agree upon a preferred solution that works well in their scenario, right? Step number 4 is balance airtime. Ensure all voices are heard equally, preventing dominant personalities from overwhelming quieter but equally valid perspectives. So make sure that everybody in the meeting is having time to speak out. So in meetings where there are more than 3 or 4 people, one of the best ways to make sure that you balance airtime is to, as a facilitator, create a document, define the problem, rather define the symptom, define the problem coming from the symptom, the analysis you've done through conversations, and what you see is the potential issue and potential solution to it. Mention that, and then finally give a brief upon what could be the outcome of the meeting that you are expecting it to be, right? Without giving the solution, just say you are expecting this to create more clearer point number 1, 2, 3 without really calling out the solution, right? And when you give out this document, ask everybody to read the document, and if people have not, dedicate the first 10 minutes of your meeting, post your ground rules, post establishing your intentions, give first 10 minutes of the meeting for people to read that document. And once people have read the document, start the meeting so that there is a balanced air time, right? And there is also reduction in repetition. Now let's move to the fifth step. Use structured dialogue. So employ techniques like round robin sharing or specific question frameworks to keep conversations productive and focused. So do some homework about the problem resolution as a facilitator. Think through it instead of jumping into the meeting directly. Okay? Now, problem solving and negotiation. How do we go about it? How do you transform conflict into collaboration without systematic probing and principled negotiation that respects all parties' legitimate interests? So, you will require a systematic problem solving and principled negotiation which will be able to solve and transform a conflict into a collaborative solution, right? Firstly, define the problem. I think I just spoke about it, right? Make a document, define the problem really well, share all the learnings from the previous private conversations that you've had, and put that in a document, give people time to read it. Second thing is brainstorm the solutions. Generate multiple options without judgment, encouraging creativity, outside the box thinking from all who are involved. So, encourage solutions. The third part is evaluate the options. Assess each potential solution against objective criteria like feasibility, fairness, sustainability, alignment, and shared goals. Fourth and important one is to reach to an agreement. Select the solution that best meets everyone's core interest. Documenting those commitments and responsibilities clearly becomes your responsibility as a facilitator. So reach into an agreement and document it for them. The final important step is to implement and follow up. So put the agreement into action with clear timelines and accountability, checking in regularly to ensure if it's working. So win-win principle. The best negotiations create value for all parties rather than simply dividing a fixed pie. Look for solutions that expand possibilities and satisfy the underlying needs of everybody involved. Chapter 4. Best practices and real world applications. So let's look into the principles that in our daily life leadership practices build resilient, high performing teams capable of navigating any challenge. Foster a culture of respect and psychological safety. So every time there is a constructive conflicts are conflicts that happen because they want to do good to each other or to the team or to the goal or to the organization. There is goodness involved in it, right? Celebrate such conflicts. Recognize and reward team members who raise difficult issues respectfully and work collaboratively towards resolving it. Welcome diverse perspectives. Actively solicit opinions and alternative viewpoints, making it clear that disagreement is valued and expected, and you respect people who bring in such disagreements in a respectful manner, right? Encourage open feedback. Create formal and informal channels for team members to voice concerns, suggestions, and constructive criticism safely. When team members trust, they can speak up without fear or retribution or ridicule. Conflicts surface early and are resolved more easily, preventing festering resentments. Focus on present and future, not past grievances. Okay? So break yourself free from the blame cycle. So dwelling on past wrongs keeps teams stuck in unproductive patterns. Effective leaders redirect energy towards shared goals and constructive situations. Acknowledge without dwelling. Validate the past hurts occurred while firmly pivoting to what do we need to move forward successfully. Define shared goals. Identify common objectives that transcend individual grievances and unite the team around a compelling future vision. Agree to disagree. Sometimes resolution means accepting different viewpoints while committing to professional collaboration and mutual respect. So, maintaining professionalism doesn't require complete agreement, it requires commitment to the shared success despite the differences. Use resources and systems that support you. Okay? Leaders don't need to manage every conflict alone. Now, this is extremely key. I want all of you to repeat this sentence with me right now. Ready? On the count of 3, 2, and 1. Leaders don't need to manage every conflict alone. That's true. Leverage organization resources and build capabilities across the teams for sustained success. You don't have to own every problem, even the problems that don't belong to you, or solve for problems that you don't have the expertise to solve for. So you can definitely involve the key departments, the key people who are critical to solve that problem as part of the conflict resolution process. Okay, so make best use of such support systems inside the organization to solve problems. The first and foremost is the human resources partnership. A HR professional usually manages some of the conflicts really, really well because they have and they can provide for the guidance of policies, they can give you mediation services, and they can also handle sensitive or escalated conflicts that require more formal interventions, right? The second thing is executive coaching. Work with coaches to develop your own conflict management skills and gain very objective perspective on challenging interpersonal dynamics. A lot of times we don't know how to deal with certain personalities, and so it is, and I would actually say it's not just interpersonal, right? Sometimes even intrapersonal. We don't know how to solve for the way the problems occur in our mind. So work with an executive coach to enable that solution. Conflict management tools. Utilize assessments like DISC or Myers-Briggs test to help team members understand different working styles and communication preferences. Regular training. Invest in ongoing development, communication workshops, conflict resolution seminars, and team building exercises that build collaborative muscles. Finally, transform conflict into leadership opportunity. Okay? Strengthen teams. Well-managed conflict builds trust, deepens relationships, and creates resilience that is helpful for future challenges together. Okay? Drive innovation. Diverse perspectives clashing productivity generate creative solutions that are homogeneous, conflict avoidant groups never discover. Inspire trust. Leaders who handle difficult conversations with skill and integrity earn the respect and loyalty of their teams. So do inspire that trust. Leaders who master conflict management don't just resolve problems, they create environments where people thrive, innovation flourishes, and sustained success becomes inevitable. Your leadership journey begins now. Embrace conflict not as a threat to avoid, but as a powerful catalyst for growth, learning, and transformation. The skills you develop today will serve you throughout your career and ripple out to benefit everyone you lead. So, with that, we are towards the end of this conflict resolution training, and this is just a bird's eye view of how to work on conflicts, right? Work with your coach to understand the different styles of conflict management that are at play in today's workplace and how one could resolve it in your next coaching session. Until then, have a good time, keep learning, keep progressing, one skill at a time, one meeting at a time, one email at a time,